Okay, I think we're off practice mode. I see people starting to trickle in. Welcome, everybody. If you're just joining, we're going to give it a probably minute or two for us to hit critical mass here. But jump into the chat, change it so that everybody can see what you're saying, and just say hello. Let us know where you are in the world. I myself am up in Mukilteo, which is about 40 minutes north of Seattle. Mare, where are you?
I am located in Carmel Valley, California, which is about an hour and a half south of San Jose.
Nice. And Salomé, what about you?
I am in the greater Washington area, north of Seattle. Pretty close to where you are.
Perfectly ambiguous. The greater Washington area.
Seattle.
Great. Let's see if we've got who's gonna win the furthest person on the call.
Italy. Oh my God.
Roberta, where in
Peru,
Italy? Wow.
Colombia, Sweden.
Philippines. Okay.
Wow, Philippines.
Italy got knocked down the list pretty quickly.
I mean, I am so
Finland.
happy that so many folks joining.
Paris,
Wow.
India. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh, this is so cool. Thank you all for coming. Hey, Diego.
Seriously. Oh, Diego's here. Hi, Diego.
Diego's here.
Hey, Diego.
Down in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see so many friends in here. This is awesome. Okay, cool. We're going to go ahead and get into it. People are going to trickle in, and that's totally okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Adam Frey Pierce. I'm going to be your host / participant today. I'm going to just go ahead and get us some context before we dive into the panel. Today, what we've done is we've gathered a group of esteemed experts in the field of design operations, talking more about these two ladies on the call rather than myself. But we're going to dive into various aspects of this critical and more important discipline that is design operations. Our panelists are going to share their insights and experiences on understanding the real needs of the design org, right-sizing the DesignOps practice, establishing critical cross-functional partnerships, measuring the impact of design operations, and scoping impact in terms of cost centers and revenue generation. So without further ado, let's just get started. We are going to just first take a minute and just say a huge thank you to UXPin. This entire series is going to be in partnership between the DesignOps Assembly and UXPin, and Meredith is my business partner over at DesignOps Assembly. We're going to be bringing together quite a bit of perspective, not only from our personal experience, but also things that we've heard from the community. And I'll do introductions in just a second. But Meredith, the reason I'm calling you out is, can you drop in a link to our website into the chat?
Absolutely.
While you do that, awesome. While you do that, I'm going to say a little something about UXPin. We do some programming with them every now and then, and every single time is a total delight. UXPin has been supporting the DesignOps Assembly now for a little over a year. They helped us get learning labs off of the ground with some scholarships there, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you. If you aren't familiar with UXPin, it's a design tool that excels at its prototyping capabilities. You can create prototypes that blur the lines between UI and reality with solutions like variables, using real data, conditional logic, and more. But what makes UXPin really unique, comparing it to other design tools, is this technology, this product that you might know of called Merge. UXPin Merge allows designers to prototype with the same components that devs build products with, meaning designers and developers using the same design system and consolidating tools. We've heard from our friends at PayPal that they redefined their DesignOps process by making and building prototypes 8 times faster. So UXPin's Merge, is definitely a tool that can help teams scale. And if you're interested in seeing how it works, there's going to be a 10-minute demo at the end of the session today. So if I said anything that piques any curiosity, be sure to hang out. I think Sage from UXPin is going to be joining the call at the end. So again, a huge thank you to UXPin for supporting the DesignOps Assembly and for funding the Learning Lab scholarships. We're just incredibly appreciative of you helping out learners that may not have been able to participate in the program otherwise. So thank you. Okay, let's introduce our panelists. I spoke briefly about Meredith Black. She is my partner in crime at the DesignOps Assembly, and she is a DesignOps consultant to companies worldwide. She's got a pretty interesting background, which I'm sure that she'll pull from and talk about later. Salomé Mortazavi is also here, and she's a senior director of DesignOps and design systems at SiriusXM. Previously, she was at VMware, Pivotal, and brings a really robust set of experiences to the call. And like I said, I'm Adam Frey-Pierce. By day, I'm the chief of staff for UX leadership at Google and a partner at DesignOps Assembly by night. And I'm going to be moderating and also kind of jumping in and sharing perspective where I can, but I think most of the gold is actually going to come from these two that are on the call. So let's just go ahead and dive in. Let's start with some high-level stuff of like, how do we actually frame design operations within the context of understanding how to best support a design organization. Let's kick off our discussion and focus on how to understand the real needs of the design orgs in which we're supposed to be servicing. So, Salomé, we'll start with you. What are the key challenges and pain points that organizations face in aligning their design efforts effectively?
Well, there can be many. But often I find really the root cause of all of these challenges are lack of alignment and understanding of the role of design within the overall strategy of the business. So really starting with that and creating a common vision and aligning your charter with the business charter and really bringing in your business partners along can really help to set that strong foundation for design and design operations. And that really helps to focus the efforts of your design operations teams to make sure that you're maximizing your efforts and your design team's efforts and really creating that environment for design to thrive. So charters, vision, the
Nice.
low-hanging fruit, which is often ignored.
Meredith, what say you?
Everything that Salomé said plus one. I also think that design teams often face bottlenecks and inefficiencies due to fragmented processes, right? And communication gaps and resource constraints. And so I really think that DesignOps can help address these challenges by streamlining workflows, implementing design systems, and fostering collaboration across the teams in a way that everybody's going to jump in and help, and everyone's going to want to make progress and move forward with what their deliverables are.
Yeah. So these are great ideas, and I think that we'll kind of do this dance of talking about theory and then getting really, really specific with maybe where we are in the calendar year. So taking everything that both of you just said, we're going into planning season. It's the time of the year where we bring leadership together to align on design org vision. It's where charter activities and some of the things that you all mentioned tend to happen in terms of either creation or updating. I'm really curious if either of you have different workshops or activities, kind of these more tactical things that you go to drive, Salomé, in your words, that alignment.
Is that for planning or more for vision setting?
Wherever you want to take it. I mean, how do you drive
Okay.
alignment generally, and within the context of planning seasons coming up? I'm sure that you have some favorite tools that you go to.
Right. So planning happening throughout the year, starting with the beginning of the year, my favorite go-to tool is to align our roadmaps around the maturity model. So I think I've said this before, I've used it in different teams, using the design maturity assessment, especially the one from the New Design Frontier. Adam, you should know this one because it comes from Envision and you were a part of that. But that really helps to define all of the different areas of focus within the 9 dimensions of maturity. So you get your leadership team together, and they all bring their qualitative challenges, needs, and goals. And the goals are more quantitative, but you can bring all of that to the table and start to have a discussion as a team and really outline the areas of focus, identify these themes, prioritize them, and then set them in your roadmap. So that's one tactical way that I've used to help our team find focus and really think about the ways that we are focusing our efforts and where to maximize that, and how to also divide and conquer together with the rest of your design leadership team.
Nice. Meredith,
Can I dive in a little bit deeper in terms of, I think Salomé is at the ideal state of how things should be in design orgs, but I think things, and probably a lot of people on this call also feel this too, and a lot of the companies that I consult with feel this as well, is that, it takes a lot of advocacy from design to get onto people's roadmaps. And I think part of the problem is that sometimes design organizations don't see, or sometimes organizations don't see design as a critical and key component to planning. And I think there are a lot of organizations like where I was at Pinterest, where it was naturally a part of the planning. And then there's organizations that I've been at since that don't have that. And so I think for me, the first thing is advocacy of the design team to cross-functional partners, to product managers and to engineers, and make them know and get them to understand and make sure that design is top of mind while planning is happening. And then once planning starts happening, make sure that we are involved. And how do we get involved? And how do we make sure that our insights and the data that we've been pulling throughout, last year is going to help enable the product for next year, and is going to unlock a lot of things to make things even better. I think sometimes, the mentality is, oh, well, design can just be a service organization, or we don't need design to have these conversations. And I think the more that we advocate for this and tell people, the power of design and the power of where we can be in the future and how to unlock some of these really significant gains, the better off we are going to be. So,
Totally.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so it's like, Salomé, you're in this ideal state that I think a lot of people want to be in right now, is like getting to that stage where you're able to have, like studio time or offsites or planning sessions where you're like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to make an impact? But I think for the organizations that aren't quite there yet, it's take a step back, advocate, find out who are going to be your key components and your key partners to make design at the forefront, or even a part of the conversation at the table, so we can get to a place like where you're at now.
Totally. And I think that's a great distinction, because the thing that I was referring to was that we have two different roadmaps, where you can't have two different roadmaps. Often it's like the product roadmap and the cross-functional team roadmap. And then there is also like a roadmap that you can have for your design organization, which is outside of the work that you do. It's like, what are the things you can do to maximize your design organization's impact?
Yeah.
And so often that's overlooked, and teams like deprioritize that, like things like improving culture and processes, and like those things are just like left to design ops to do alone. But like bringing that to the conversation with the rest of your design leadership, I find that to be really impactful. But then plus one to all the other things you said around actual planning and actual roadmaps, which is also very, very key.
Yeah, I also think there's this component, and maybe I'm going off script a little bit, but I do think there's this component, and there's this really amazing opportunity that when you are in the planning stages, to really take a look at your team and to focus internally about like what your team needs, or how to grow your team, or how to give other people or designers other opportunities. I think some designers unfortunately get stuck only working on growth for like 4 or 5 years, only working on, one key component of an organization, and don't get the opportunity to work on other components of it. And so I always find this as a really great opportunity to take a look at who's on the team, see who we can move around, see who we can match skill sets to, and give our designers the opportunity to, excel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to be asking some questions to everyone else too. The reason why we're going to be doing some of these polls is some of the things that we're saying. Salomé is currently coming from a slightly larger design team. I can't remember what the size of the orgs that you've been on lately, Meredith, are, but I think that they're mid-sized teams.
Yeah.
And then the perspective that when I jump in, I'll probably try to go wherever the audience is. So we're trying to figure out how much more can we localize some of the insights that we're pulling forward to make it really valuable for everyone to call. I think I just saw that most folks here had a design org anywhere from a few people to like 40 or 50. And then there are some folks that are on the fringes here. I think that there's two things to keep in mind as well. Going into planning season, trying to drive alignment is some of the things that I believe Meredith, you articulated, or Salomé. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm really sick right now, so my brain's kind of like this. Is going to them, going to partners, and trying to understand what their goals are and what their incentives are. There's a famous quote, I think it's by Benjamin Graham, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And so we need to really understand where our partners' incentives are. Not that we are necessarily a service team, but really understanding goals is one thing, but truly understanding the incentives and the levers that actually move these teams, whether it's a carrot or a stick, is critically important for the design org, and then by extension, design operations. Also, another thing that I like to think of, Salomé, you were talking about some of these kind of softer, maybe less, they're a little harder to measure things that sometimes design operators do. Things like, let's call them people operations, building up culture through events, and helping our designers feel connected. Those are always going to be important, but urgency crushes importance, and it's something that within a less resourced team, a smaller design ops team, let's say, you may feel pulled to want to go to some of these things that are important, like culture, but the reason why we're there is really to drive value for design organizations and to make sure that we're efficient. So it's okay, is all I'm trying to say, is you're going to want to do all these things, but really aligning with your partners and understanding what's important to them is probably where we should start. Okay, let's go into, now that we're kind of talking about a theme that has been coming up a lot lately out in the community, is this feeling like design operators are under-resourced. Going into annual planning, let's talk about maybe how we might be able to right-size the design ops practice. Let's start with whoever wants to take it. How can organizations determine the appropriate scale and scope of design ops to fit their unique needs?
Ooh, I'm going to have a long answer.
Do you want to go, Mary?
I think this is really hard, and it's really hard to assess. I think different teams have different needs, right? For example, when I was at Pinterest and there were 9 designers on the team at the time, and it was me, I could handle doing design ops for all of these 9 people. There were very different personalities. There were, some designers were like great at taking notes, setting up meetings, following up with their product managers. And then there were designers that were much more amazing at the craft and couldn't do that. And so for me, I didn't have the option of hiring other people at the time. And so it was, okay, where am I going to put my energy? Where am I going to put my effort right now to make sure that I am helping the people that are working on the projects that are most impactful? Right. And then as the design team grew and I was allowed to get more headcount to help support this infrastructure, I did it in a very slow way. And I think a lot of organizations get really excited about design operations and they're like, oh, we're going to hire 5 right now. And I think that can be detrimental in the future. And this might be controversial for me to say, but I'm going to say it. I think if you start slow and if you're going to be leading this design operations team, start to really understand the nuances of the team and the nuances of the organization, you can start to identify what types of people, what types of personalities, and what types of skill sets are going to work within this organization. If you're hiring 5 people at once, that's very hard to do, right? And I've done this in my past. Where I'm like, okay, well, I want this type of person, or I want this, and then I've brought them into the organization, and it was totally opposite of what we need, and we didn't set anybody up for success. And so I think you need to think about what the needs are of the design team and what the needs are of your cross-functional partners in order to properly build out a design ops team that is going to be sustainable. And something that you just mentioned, Adam, that I think is really important is people ops, right? Like, I think anybody in any organization wants to have operations and wants to have learning and development for their team, wants to have guest speakers in, wants to go onto offsites, wants to make sure that people are going and speaking at engagements outside of the places, want to do all of the stuff. But at the end of the day, how is that shifting your business? And 9 times out of 10, anybody in a business leadership role is going to say that does not shift the business. Those are nice to haves. So in order to keep your team and in order to make sure that you don't have a reduction in force or you don't have a round of layoffs, you really need to justify the role, and you need to justify it in a way that is going to make impact for the design team and impact for the cross-functional teams first. Once you get there, once you get buy-in, once everybody knows what you're doing, then you can add those other layers on. But you've got to build the foundation first. I don't know if that answers your question or if I just went off on a tangent, but
No, I think what you're tell me if I'm capturing what you're saying, and then Salomé would love to hear from you. But Meredith, I think what you're saying is resist the urge to want to do everything, similar to what we were saying before, really focusing on the things that are most critical. And also keep in mind that we're in a time of austerity and convergence, and asking for things like hiring grants and really anything that has to do with money right now may actually paint a little bit of a target on your back. So trying to do
yeah.
low cost but high reward efforts are likely going to bode well for the design ops
Yeah.
team.
Yeah, I totally agree. Focus on impact.
Yeah, and I think I couldn't agree more with what you said, Meredith. I mean, like starting with, this role that I'm in, SiriusXM, for the first couple of months, I was just a team of one to really understand what are the processes, what are the pain points, really just be doing the work. So as I bring my team on, then I can really support them and help them understand how to be effective, and then also understanding like the right sizing, because like size does not necessarily mean impact often,
Yeah.
or always. And so I find being able to do that yourself is really effective, really understanding the needs, really important, but also getting more creative in times of austerity, as you said, Adam, was, looking at ways through which you can multiply your efforts or scale your efforts, and not in the most obvious ways, not necessarily with headcount, but is there a manager or a leader that is really interested in partnering with you, or unlocking the opportunity for a design lead who wants to get into more processes and design ops types of activities. And those are some of the force multipliers that can help you to not always have to go reach for the most obvious lever like headcount.
Yeah. To add to that, Salome, is something that we have started seeing over the past year or two, which is there are a lot of designers transitioning into design ops.
Mm-hmm.
And, from running the design ops assembly community, the first line I always hear is, I've been doing design ops all along. I just didn't realize I was doing it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something to be said for that, is that if you're a designer and you are running design ops, you definitely understand the brain of a designer, right? I mean, because you've been one, like you've been in the trenches, you've been in the weeds. And so I think you're right. I think when there are times when, headcount is short, or when budgets are short and you can't hire people, it's look inside your team and see if there are folks who are A, already doing this, or B, have an interest in it, and maybe want to help and pitch in. I did this a lot at Pinterest, especially when I didn't have, big headcounts, is, I'd focus on the business need first. I'd focus on what we needed to do to create impact. And then I would create opportunities for folks on the ops team to do more. Right. And so it'd be like, okay, hey, you're running this huge, massive project that has, like Q4 deadlines, and we've got to get to them. But you're telling me you've got bandwidth to help out and learn about like how finance is run, how budget is run, how headcount is done. Like, jump in, help me do this. Let's do this. I can't let you do this full time because we don't have that yet, but like, let's get you prepped, and let's get you stimulated so that way you can do something else when the time comes. And I think that's the really important thing to think about here, is that because we have so many layoffs happening right now, and because design and design ops is really being impacted by what is potentially a recession. We keep saying we don't know if we're in it or not, right? But the thing to remember is that like everything always bounces back. If you look at the history of the United States, and if you literally look at a chart from the 1930s with the Great Depression all the way until now, if you look at the stock market during every single significant blip, whether it's the Great Depression, whether it's the wars, whether it's the Great Recession, whether it's COVID, every single time it goes up, it goes down, and it honestly always goes back up and keep continuing to go back up. So if you're in this moment right now where you're frustrated that you can't grow your team, or you've just been laid off, it's not forever. It's not permanent. It's just now, and it's a blip, and it will change. So,
And also makes you stronger, because it makes you be more resilient and look in the more unusual places, and like tough times really build diamonds. I like to think of it that way. So I find that's like a growth opportunity for your team and also yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
1000%. Yeah, we were just talking about this at the event last week for the DesignOps Assembly. This is coming up. A few people were even saying, like, what's the future of this industry? It really feels like it's a scary time. My take before we move on to cross-functional partnerships is we are in a time of really proving, our worth in the similar way that design organizations more broadly are, focusing on the things that matter, showing that there's true value exchange between this function and the business that we serve or service, depending on how you like to frame that. But yes, I think that there's a moment right now, Salomé, to your point, where we are just getting stronger.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to cross-functional partnerships. This came up a few times. We kind of mentioned it. Cross-functional partnerships, in my experience, is one of the hardest components for a design organization to do well, is to feel like they're in tandem and aligned with their most critical partners across a business. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Let's talk about how we can actually establish strong cross-functional partnerships, and how can design operations specifically foster collaboration and facilitate stronger relationships between design and other departments. We're going to ask everybody here, what is the most critical partnership for you? Would love to see what you say, and then that will kind of frame up how we respond. But Salomé, let's start at a high level. What's your take?
I mean, I believe that our jobs exist because of bridging silos, because I've worked in situations where we've had, I was a designer myself for many years, and I worked in the more like idyllic environment of, engineering, product, and design in a squad and working together. And in those situations, there's less of a need for operations because everyone is communicating, sitting in close proximity, working together. But in areas where you start to have larger teams and designers are more centralized or maybe hybrid, then you start to see these gaps across these functions. And so you can be the glue for your team. And I think one of the most underrated is building those relationships, personal relationships with your engineering partners, with your product partners, with the technical program managers that are your operational folks that support those teams. Same thing with product operations, if you have them, we do in our org. And so I have regular one-on-ones with all of these functions, and I think about that as like an investment of how to really make sure that you get to know them, you get to understand their objectives, you get to understand their goals, and really help them understand where you can fit into that larger narrative for them. And when you do that and you have that strong relationship, when times get tough and push comes to shove, like in the times that actually matters, like when you know someone really close and intimately in a work setting, you can really end up being able to get the things that you're looking for your team pushed through a lot easier. So this could look like communication channels, setting up practices that are shared like retros, and those things can really, really help your team to be more effective and build those strong relationships.
Yeah.
To add to that, I think, oh, sorry, Adam, you go ahead.
No. Just to say, we're in many ways in the people business. And so no surprise that a lot of those answers were about people.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I always say design ops is 90% relationships, 10% actual like work. And, to add to what Salomé is saying, I think that there is this component where it is also our responsibility as design operations folks to really educate people within cross-functional teams, whether that's product or engineering or marketing or legal or finance for that matter, what design does and how they do it. And I think, I always used to meet with the new product manager and the new eng manager who would come in, and I'd say, hey, can we meet for 30 minutes? I want to introduce you to the team. I want to talk to you about the design team. I want to show you how we're set up. I want to show you what we do, what our design reviews are, how we think. And then I'm going to talk to you about who's on your team. And I'm going to tell you, like, here's X, Y, and Z. These are the kind of personalities they have. This is the kind of relationships they like forging. This is how they receive information, you know, whether it's Slack or an email. This is how they like to be followed up. So I really set our partners up for success. And I feel like if you can kind of be that person that they go to when they're like, oh, I don't know how to us design this, or I don't know how to us design that, or I need help with the problem. If you can become that person that's kind of that proxy, they're going to rely on you a lot more. And they're also going to take your advice because you've built that relationship and they know that you care about them, not only as a person, but you care about what the outcome is. At the end of the day, we can say all the things we want in design, but like we're all following the same roadmap, right? And if we have sub roadmaps to sub roadmaps to sub roadmaps, nothing's going to get done. And so if we can all be aligned on what we want to do and how we want to accomplish it together, we're going to be much more successful. So I think that's, you know, the one thing that I always really try to drive home is that not only is it important to educate what DesignOps is within a design team, 9 times out of 10, everybody knows that we're here to help them, but it's also to advocate and to educate and to make sure that people know that design is really a function that needs to be included from the beginning.
Can we have a little bit of time, and I kind of want to go a little bit deeper here because I don't know about you two, but this is one of those areas that is like there's a lot of good theory out there. There's some great case studies, but in reality, I think that there's like 2 buckets of type of partners, maybe even 3. There's those that are open-minded and those that just don't care. And I'm not sure if it's an incentive thing, but I am curious, maybe you can tell us a story about when you effectively were able to take somebody where maybe there was not the best relationship with and improve it. And it looks like most of the people who are on the call kind of come from like the center of our community at the DesignOps Assembly, which is mostly on like the product side. But it does look like there's a few research ops people here and maybe some creative ops people or people ops people. But it does seem like most of it's design ops. So within that framing, for friends over in product or engineering, when's a time that maybe you were able to take somebody where they just didn't give design the time of day and turn them into true allies? Do either of you have something that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many that I can think of. A lot of times, like my mind goes to product or engineering. Really, products often can look at design as like an execution arm if they don't really understand the role of design, as Meredith explained. So in previous organizations that I've been, current organization, we happen to be fortunate that we have a strong relationship with product and design, so product and engineering. But in previous organizations that I've been, the lack of understanding of design's role, as Meredith said, could cause a lot of problems because design became an execution arm. And so by spending time really helping product understand and bringing workshops, like something tangible that people can experience and see, especially in the world of Zoom, where collaboration is really hard, design can be a really nice bridge where you can create that forum for quick decision making, really aligning around goals, which, you know, efficiency, quick decision making, and getting to the solution faster is something that product and also the organization really cares about. So I've used tactics like workshops, design sprints, design thinking workshops, different types of activities like that to bring product and engineering together. And once you experience it and you see it firsthand, you start to take design out of this mold that it has been of like, oh, like you're here to make things look pretty, or, you know, when am I going to get those designs? And you start to see that, wow, we're really thinking about the holistic experience, and I am able to inject my opinion and my evidence as a product and form the strategy and lead the strategy, but I don't need to tell you exactly what to do. I can rely on your expertise as a design team to help actually maximize this and help me arrive at my strategy. And same thing, I can bring in, you know, engineering, and that technical feasibility lens really helps to then actually make the design solution better. So as design ops practitioners, and especially if you come from the world of design, you can set up these practices and these forums where you can and bring the voice of the different partners into the design journey. And it becomes like one singular journey towards like better user outcomes versus like, this is what I'm trying to do in my silo as a product, and this is what I'm trying to do as an engineer, and this is what I'm doing as design, and everyone's fighting, and what we're all going towards the same destination. So I think those things can really be very, very impactful.
I like that, taking them there, showing, yeah, and you're great at this. I think you told me a story a while ago about how you do this, and I think you said something around like find a dark corner of the business and something that you know that your partners care about, and show them that design can help unlock. But thanks for taking us there. Meredith, any additional context or story you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple, but I think the one that resonates the most is when, and this is specific about design ops and not design, but when I was interviewing at Pinterest, it was really interesting because Bob Baxley, who was running design at the time, he was like, oh, we need this role. And I met with the head of product, and he's like, yeah, this sounds good. You know, met with all the designers. They were like, yeah, this sounds great. And then I met with one product manager, and I think he was probably like my first interview of the day. So I was like really excited and had a ton of energy. So that probably like scared the Jesus out of him. But, you know, he came out of the interview, and when they were doing the debrief on me, and granted, I came to find this out like months later, he was like, no, absolutely not. I don't think we need a design ops person. I don't think it's going to add value. I don't think that this is going to help me get to designers closer. I think that this is just going to be like, this is going to be more difficult for me because there's going to be this person blocking the designers. Right. He was like hell bent on this. And so it was this awkward moment because everybody said like, yes, we should hire her except for this one person. And so they like had to go and talk to him and be like, okay, hey, like, I think we should give this a try. I think we should hire her, and like kind of convince him to hire me into the role. Granted, I didn't know any of this. I got the job offer. I accepted. I was so thrilled to be there. I thought because, you know, this person had interviewed me, he probably said yes. And I was like so excited to work with him. And I went in and started working with him, and I did the exact opposite of what he was saying. And like I've said before, like going in, helping them understand the design team, knowing that we're advocates for them, and doing all of this stuff. And one day we were walking down the stairs, and he looks at me and he's like, I'm just so sorry. And I was like, for what? And he goes, I didn't want to hire you. He's like, I voted no, and everyone had to convince me. And now I don't know what I would do without someone like you. And so it was kind of that moment. And I think like that's to be said for what Salomé says, is like, you've got to get people over the hurdle. Like you've got to get people into the experience and experiencing things before they can really understand like what it means to make impact and make to make things happen and to make things move. That's going to help not only the design team, but the whole organization. And I don't tell that story to like gloat about, you know, the moment, even though I still give him hell to this day because we are very good friends. But like, I say this because I think there are going to be moments where we all face these challenges and where we all butt heads with somebody, and persistence and doing it in a way that is humane and human and, you know, passionate about what you're doing, but also understanding the empathy of their side is really important to coming up with like an end goal for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe the most important. I think a lot about centers of power, which, you know, not to be super controversial on the call, but power is real and power matters. There are places in every single business where power resides more than others from a functional standpoint. In acknowledging that is incredibly helpful. It's been incredibly helpful for me. Going to them, driving empathy for where the true decision-making power is. It just definitely matters. Okay, looking at the clock, we've got quite a few questions and answers. So let's try and wrap this up. We've got 2 more questions. Let's try and time box it to maybe like 5-6 minutes each.
Okay.
The next one is all around measuring impact. This is super hot topic. I mean, it's always important, but definitely important right now. Again, times of austerity and convergence. So let's delve into how we actually do this. How can organizations tell a compelling story about the ROI of DesignOps? Salomé.
So, you know, the ROI of DesignOps in my mind is directly tied to the ROI of design, the reason we exist. So taking it back to the right sizing and finding and evaluating the themes across your organization, all of the efforts that you've prioritized and are in your roadmap should be tied to specific metrics. And so these metrics can really be anywhere along the line of the efficiency metrics or efficacy metrics. I forget one of my favorite design ops practitioners. Her name escapes my mind, but she came up with these metrics, the efficiency and efficacy metrics. And Adam, if you know, or Meredith, if you know, please let me know.
I think it's Patricia, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And so, yeah, and so I love those. And within those are a set of metrics that you can tie to each of your efforts. And then also at like the larger scale, the reason I love using the design maturity model is because, you know, it is supported by a large set of data across the industry, 2,200 different companies looking at the ROI of design and business impact. And I think that's always the story and the narrative that's really important for a design function to be able to tell the business. And so by aligning it to this larger story, then you're able to like actually quantify and share the value of design more clearly, and therefore share the value of design operations, because one of those dimensions happens to be design operations and also design systems, which is like part of my team that I also run. And so again, tying it to metrics and telling a really compelling story that ties to the overall business needs is the way that I like to tell show the value of design operations and design.
100%. Yeah, a total +1. Meredith, you got some thoughts?
Yeah, just to add to that, you know, translate these metrics into tangible outcomes, right? Like talk about what the revenue growth is, talk about the customers, you know, customer loyalty, cost savings, and things like that. I also think there's something to be said about like design team productivity, reduced time to market, stuff like that. So if you've got some of these tangible data points that you can add in, it's really going to go a long way.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit of personal experience, the idea of a North Star metrics was one that I heard about for a while, and it was only in the last like 2 years that I really started implementing this into my work. And I feel like it was the unlock, like the single best tactical thing that I have done with every single brief that I've put together is this idea of like, what is the single thing that we're trying to move? Because that really easily converts into Meredith and Salomé, both your points, the idea of story. At some point, we should be playing back our story either to our partners who are heading up the design organization or the business more broadly. In telling that continuous strategic narrative is something that we should be doing, not as just a moment in time, but it should be rolling thunder, right? We should be beating that drum at least once a quarter, checking in. It's why the rituals of QBRs, one of the reasons why QBRs are so important is not just to make sure that we say, hey, everyone said that we were going to do certain things. How are we doing? What do we need to change? But also as a subtle reminder to your partners about the hypothesis that you have put out there, about the things that you are aiming to try to change, and always make sure that we're still aligned, that most important metric that you're tracking is still the most important thing that you should be moving forward on, and just being a kind of one team in that worldview. Okay, let's go into finances of the design org, and then we'll go to questions. I know that there was someone in the chat had said, where do we go? If you just mouse over, if you're on desktop, you'll see kind of this bottom nav pop up, and there's a Q&A button right there. If you have questions, go ahead and drop them in, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Last question here to cap things off. Let's explore scoping impact in terms of money. We're talking cost centers, we're talking revenue generators. How can design ops influence these aspects? We've just started to touch on it, but what metrics really fall within, not our sphere of influence, but like what's really within our sphere of control? I realize that this question is going to have broad variance, depends on the size of your company, the maturity, as Salomé has been talking about, where you are in that journey. If you're a team of one, if this is an unofficial position or an official position, right? So really, as you're listening to this, ground it to yourself. I would encourage you to think about what is in your sphere of control. Salomé, let's start with you. How do you do this?
So I think right now, as we all mentioned here, there's, the natural tendency is to think about contraction and looking at ways, and unfortunately, a lot of our folks on the call probably have experienced this too. Businesses looking to contract and thinking about, for example, the role of design ops as the first place to go. But I find if you actually look at the impact of design operations, like in terms of being able to reduce, for example, design development time, optimizing workflows, retention, all of that stuff can really help to show the cost savings that design ops can have, and really thinking about those and telling that story is going to be really key. And I think those are some of those key metrics, like percent utilization, the time that it takes to prototype and test. Those are things that really the business cares about. In terms of design system, reduction of design bugs, for example. And so once you start to package these metrics that you've defined to some of your efforts, you can really map this to cost savings and really protect your team, and also really help to make your design team more impactful too.
Awesome. Totally. Meredith.
Yeah, I also think focusing on the tooling stack is just a crowd favorite to create a business case for design ops. There's so many inefficiencies in tool stacks and enterprises, and design orgs are no exception, right? And I think as design ops practitioners, we can identify tools that can speed up velocity, reduce waste in design cycles, improve collaboration touch points, between design and cross-functional partners. And, I'm thinking about this, and we've got UXPin on the call, and like UXPin Merge is like a great example of this, right? Instead of having a bunch of different tools, if you're using one tool, it's going to help everybody get where they need to be in a very efficient manner. And so I just think, design ops can play a role in revenue generation by really enhancing the overall user experience. They can lead to increased customer acquisition, retention, brand loyalty, and, metrics within our sphere of control that we can control include, conversion rates, user engagement, customer satisfaction scores, stuff like that as well.
Yeah. The last thing that I'll throw out there is right now, saving the companies that invest into this function money is a huge deal, right? And so depending on the scale of the design org that you support, some of the things that y'all have thrown out there, they can very quickly translate into seven-figure, very real dollar signs that you can attribute your efforts to, and put it into that kind of framing. And if we look ahead to Meredith's point earlier around business cycles, there are times of growth ahead, and right now is the time to kind of make the business case for what the design operations team can do. Finding those hard metrics are important. I want to go back 2 questions ago where we had asked, do you track North Star metric? I think it was like 60% of the call had said no. I would very friendly encourage you to find time as a design operator to figure out what that North Star metric is. And that doesn't happen in a silo. It happens in a conversation with your design leadership. Okay, let's move on to Q&A. And then as a heads up to everybody, we're probably going to be cutting out 5 to 8 minutes from now, and then switching over to UXPin. So we'll only have a chance for a few of these questions. Let's start off at the top. Open question: how do you see design ops how do you see design ops become more inclusive to those trying to emerge into the space from industries outside of tech and digital products? Anybody want to take it?
My team, I have some folks on my team that were not necessarily in the world of tech. I have design program managers that came from program management for adjacent teams like compliance, for example, or legal. I think a lot of those things translate over. Granted, we're still working at a tech company, but it wasn't necessarily coming from design operations or being really familiar with like the end-to-end workflow. I think it really depends on the type of team you're joining. I think as a first hire of one, it might be harder for that team to be able to bring you in. But if you have a more mature, established design ops team, and also like a very patient manager who loves to, work with you, then that can work, and it can be really successful. I've seen it firsthand.
Right on. And we could either do double approach right now and cover just like one or two questions, or we can just kind of like oscillate and go back and
Let's
forth. Meredith?
oscillate.
All right, cool.
I want to make sure we get through as many as we can.
Okay. Next question. How do we quantify that our roadmap items are actually going to help the team? Mer?
Wow. Well, I mean, we've talked about I think we've talked about this in terms of how to make impact and how we measure what we measure and making things tangible. Just to kind of go back to what we said, I think like you need to tell a story that resonates with stakeholders. You need to translate metrics into tangible outcomes. And, again, talk about revenue growth, cost savings, customer loyalty, and ways that you made the team more efficient to get more done or make a larger impact on things as an end result.
Yeah, I would also challenge anybody who's making a roadmap in a silo again. If something's on the roadmap for a design ops team, I imagine that it would be co-prioritized with your your design leadership more broadly. And therefore the question kind of removes itself, right? Because if you're making it in partnership and you're doing prioritization exercises around urgency and importance, it's hard to imagine that something would be on the roadmap as an active work stream unless it had co-sign off. Okay, let's go down to it's kind of an extension of the first question. Salomé, back to you. Is it advisable to bring design ops who don't have a design background? Or I think it's saying, is it advisable to bring somebody into design operations who doesn't come from design? Do you have thoughts?
I mean, I've seen both be really effective. Having a design background does really help because then you can understand the processes that you're trying to implement. But I also think strong program management skills translate. And so I have a mix of both on my team, and I've seen both be really effective. So I feel like it comes down to the individual and the passion that they have for learning. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. I think I don't necessarily come from a product design background, program management all the way. And I'm doing okay.
Now look
all right.
at you.
Let's do one or two more. In the era of ChatGPT and Bard, how would it change the way or impact the design ops practices followed currently?
I mean, I think when any new technology comes out, everybody's like terrified that like, oh no, this is going to change things. Like Y2K, like, oh, the world's going to end. Like, how is this going to do things? Now we've got, ChatGPT. I think in some ways it's going to help design ops people do their jobs faster and more efficiently. I also think that you're still always going to need design ops, and there's never going to be a place where ChatGPT is going to replace that, because as I said before, 90% of this job is relationships. And as much as we want ChatGPT or Bard to develop relationships with other people, I think it's going to be a little bit challenging for them. So that's my take. That's my hot take on that right now.
Yeah. Can I jump in, Salomé, or do you have something?
Oh my, I mean, I could just not agree more. I mean, I've used it personally to maximize my efforts and make things go faster.
Yeah, I use Bard every single day as a co-pilot. It allows me to do more. I would encourage everyone to spend time with these tools. It is going to come into our life more and more and more. And I don't know, if we look back at history, moments like this with other technology where there was a lot of fear, those that didn't embrace it seem to have quote unquote been left behind. Seems like it's here to stay. I would encourage everyone to get comfortable with it. Okay. I know both of you need to go. How about we actually just say thank you and thanks so much. I really, really appreciate both of you giving us an hour of your day and spending time on the panel.
It was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks for guiding us, Adam.
Yeah, do my best.
Hope
All
you
right,
feel
Sage.
better.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I am starting to shake. So I think it's time for a little bit of medicine. And Sage, I'll just pass it off to you.
Thanks, Adam. And thank you all so much. It was really insightful, and just seeing all the comments and everything was really awesome. So thank you all again. So just to introduce myself really quickly, I'm Sage. I am a sales lead over here at UXPin, and I work with teams every day to help them solve some of their issues around design ops, design tooling, and being able to create more efficient processes. So I'm just going to do kind of a speed run of UXPin today. And if you want to learn more, I highly encourage you to reach out, and we'd be happy to walk you through a more in-depth demo. But essentially, what UXPin does is that, Adam kind of mentioned this, and Meredith as well, that UXPin is a all-in-one design tool. So you can do everything from your initial prototyping, right? If we think about other tools, you can do your wireframing, brainstorming, things like that in UXPin. But I also have a couple of examples here of where you can go even a layer further, right? We can start creating interactive prototypes right here in UXPin. And what I want to talk about today, outside of, the ability to create these more complex prototypes, is also a feature that we have called UXPin Merge. And what UXPin Merge is it's the ability to actually take your coded components. So say you have a design system that you already have fully built out, or you're leveraging something open source like Material UI is a very popular one that we hear. You can take those coded components that development is actively using to build out products and bring that into UXPin so that designers can start prototyping with real live coded components. So I want to be able to show you, I know we just have a couple of minutes. So this is just a silly example that we have of some of the frustrations that we talked about today of, we have this beautiful design that we want to build out, and then it just doesn't end up getting executed in development. And that's largely due to just this silo that we were talking about on the call today, right? Where everybody's kind of working in these separate places. And so there's no cohesiveness, and we don't have a true process built out for designers and all stakeholders to be able to have one source of truth. And so that's where Merge comes in, where you can now take your coded components, be able to work off of what development is currently using to build out products with, and implement that into our design process. So we're starting to work off of the same language, if you will, figuratively and literally, right? Where now you can actually create a centralized process around your design system, how it's built out, the colors, typography, these, the tokenization of your designs that you're building out, and have it all be in one place. So I'm just going to show a very quick example. I know a couple people need to drop off, and if you do, I'd love to show a more in-depth demo. So feel free to reach out to sales@uxpin.com, and we'd be happy to walk you through this a little bit more in depth. But I want to take this card example that we have here that is a merge component in UXPin. So this is a coded component that I'm pulling directly from Material UI. And we can see that this, if I go back into my preview link really quickly in UXPin, I have this dashboard here. These are also coded components. And if I just quickly go in, not that far in, and if I scroll down to the bottom here, I have this card component that I just dragged and dropped. And you can see that it already has the interactivity built out. I can click into these, this icon, this button. We have that animation because this is a true coded component that's already been built out. It has the interactivity, so designer can start composing designs. And for development, when it's handed over, a developer can now go in and see all the redlining, the specs, and we can click into these coded components, and now a developer has the exact code that they will need to be able to copy and paste this and start building it out into a product. And that's where we start to see alignment, because we're not pixel pushing anymore. We're not working off of different sources of truth or those silos. Now we're actually able to bring that process in together with all of the different stakeholders and start creating seamless, interactive designs that we can now see be pushed into production in a way that design intended. So like I said, that was a very brief kind of run through. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you want to see something a little bit more in depth, you can reach us at sales@uxpin.com. And again, I just want to thank everybody for joining the call today. Really appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.